Hello everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to share with you our focus on Mega Goal 1.2. Today we'll be exploring Unit 10, titled I Wonder What Happened, and we'll dive into the fascinating topics of form, meaning, and function. Over the next few slides, we'll discuss how these concepts help us understand language better. Let's get started and have a great session together. Now let's take a closer look at independent clauses with some common coordinating conjunctions. And, but, or, so, and yet. All of these examples are independent clauses, which means they can stand alone as complete sentences. For example, in the sentence, we could go to a restaurant, we could stay home and watch TV. The blank should be filled with or, because it's presenting two options. Next, we have he doesn't live far away, he always drives. Here, the best fit is so, indicating that because he lives nearby, he drives. Then there's he didn't want to walk in the rain, he took a taxi. The word so works here again, showing a cause and effect relationship. Finally, in it is raining hard, there is a lot of lightning. The correct word is and, connecting two related observations about the weather. Remember, the key point is that these conjunctions join independent clauses, helping us build clear, connected sentences. This understanding is essential as we explore how to create more complex and nuanced sentences in our writing. All right, let's talk about clauses. On this slide, you'll see that clauses are mainly of two types, dependent clauses and independent clauses. These are the building blocks of complex sentences. For example, in the sentence, when I came here, I saw him and he greeted me. We have three clauses, each with its own subject and verb. Similarly, when I came here, I saw him has two clauses, and a simple sentence like I graduated last year contains just one clause. Now, what exactly is a clause? Well, it's a group of words that includes both a subject and a verb. And depending on how it's used, a clause can function in different ways, either as an adjective, an adverb, or a noun. Understanding clauses is key to mastering sentence structure and making your writing clearer and more varied. So, keep these points in mind as we move forward in exploring sentence construction. In this slide, we're looking at two types of clauses, independent and dependent. First, let's talk about the independent clause. An independent clause can stand on its own as a complete sentence because it has a subject and a verb that express a complete thought. For example, in the sentence, he bought a car which was too expensive. The part, he bought a car, is an independent clause because it makes sense by itself. Now, moving on to dependent clauses. These are also called subordinate clauses. They cannot stand alone as complete sentences because they leave a thought unfinished. For instance, in I want to buy a phone, but I don't have enough money. The second part, but I don't have enough money, is an independent clause, but if you see a clause like, because I was late, that's dependent because it doesn't express a complete idea on its own. An important point to remember is that two independent clauses can be connected with coordinating conjunctions like and, but, so, or yet. This helps us form longer, more complex sentences. On the other hand, dependent clauses help complete the meaning of an independent clause and are often introduced by subordinating words such as because, although, or when. Understanding the difference between these two types of clauses is fundamental because it helps us craft clearer, more precise sentences, whether we're explaining ideas, making arguments, or telling stories. This concept ties into the overall theme of building strong, effective communication in our language use. Let's take a moment to look at how we can remember the 7 coordinating conjunctions easily. The best way is by using the acronym FANBOYS. Think of FANBOYS as your key players in connecting ideas. A coordinating conjunction is simply a word that joins two words, like two verbs, two nouns, or even two independent clauses. It helps make our sentences flow smoothly. The 7 coordinating conjunctions we're talking about are for, and nor, but, or yet, and so. These words are essential because they show relationships between ideas, making our writing clearer and more cohesive. Remembering FANBOYS will help you identify and use these conjunctions confidently in your sentences. Now, let's look at how we talk about the past using dependent time clauses. The key idea here is that when we want to describe two actions that happened in the past, we often use a main clause, which is independent, and then add a comma followed by a time clause, which is dependent. For example, I might say, before we watched the movie, we had dinner. In this case, the main action is having dinner, and the dependent time clause is before we watched the movie. It's important to note the pattern. The main clause can come first or second, but the dependent time clause always contains a subordinating conjunction. Some common subordinating conjunctions used in the past are before, after, since, until, while, as soon as, and when. For example, you could say, after I finished my homework, I went outside, or we stayed inside until the rain stopped. These conjunctions help us connect two past actions clearly and logically. Understanding how to use these clauses correctly is fundamental, because it helps us tell stories or describe sequences of events in a natural, fluent way. It also ties into the overall theme of mastering past tense storytelling in English, making our communication more precise and engaging. Let's talk about how we can express enthusiasm using intensifiers and adjectives. When describing variations in temperature, for example, we often use words like hot or cold. These are what we call gradable adjectives, meaning we can compare different levels, like warm, hotter, or coldest. But when we want to describe the limits or extremes of temperature, we use words like boiling or freezing. These are non-gradable adjectives because they refer to the absolute extremes. Something is either boiling or it's not, and the same goes for freezing. So what does this mean? Well, adjectives describe qualities that something has, such as temperature, appearance, or size. And these adjectives fall into two main categories. Gradable adjectives, like hot or cold, which can be modified to show different degrees, and non-gradable adjectives, like boiling or freezing, which indicate the absolute limits. Understanding this distinction helps us communicate more precisely and vividly. It ties back to our overall theme of expressing enthusiasm and intensity in language. When we choose the right adjectives, we can better convey the strength of our feelings or the extremity of a situation. This guide will help you remember that, when you're working through this material, it's important to focus on a few key points. First, try to explain these points thoroughly but keep it conversational, so it feels natural and engaging. Highlight the most important concepts, those core ideas that really drive the message home, and always try to connect each point back to the overall theme of the presentation, showing how they fit into the bigger picture. This way, your audience can follow along easily and see the relevance of what you're sharing. Remember, the goal is to make these ideas clear and memorable. Now, let's look at how we complete the witness report using the correct form of the verbs in the past tense. First, notice that some verbs, like had, are used in multiple contexts, so it's important to choose the right form based on the sentence. For example, had can indicate possession or an action completed before another past action. Next, verbs like were and was are the past forms of are and is, and they describe states or conditions in the past. Then we have seen, heard, fallen, which are past participles used with auxiliary verbs like had or had seen to form perfect tenses. It's crucial to pay attention to these forms because they help tell the sequence of events and the timeline of what the witness observed or experienced. For instance, had seen suggests the witness saw something before another past event, while had heard indicates prior hearing. By understanding when to use each form, we ensure the report accurately reflects the sequence of events and the witness's perspective. This careful selection of verb forms is essential for clear, professional reporting that supports our overall investigation. Now let's look at some future facts and how they compare to present facts. When we talk about future conditions, such as if it rains, we say, if it rains, we will stay at home. Notice how the structure here is if plus a present tense verb, and then will plus a base verb for the result. This shows us how we talk about things that haven't happened yet but depend on certain conditions. Similarly, if you wake up late, you will miss the bus. Again, the structure is the same, present tense in the if clause and will plus the verb in the main clause. It's a way of expressing cause and effect in the future. Now shifting to present facts, we have an example. When you heat water, it boils. Here, we use when instead of if, because this is a regular, factual occurrence. The key point is that heating water causes it to boil, something that's always true under the right conditions. And just to emphasize, the sentence, if you heat water, it boils, is also correct, and is used to state a general truth or scientific fact. The main thing to take away is that present facts describe what is always true, while future facts describe what will happen if certain conditions are met. Connecting this to the overall theme, understanding these structures helps us communicate clearly about both what is always true and what might happen in the future depending on specific conditions. This distinction is fundamental in forming accurate and meaningful sentences in English. Now let's take a closer look at some common conditional structures, starting with the use of infinitives. When we talk about possibilities or intentions, we often use may or might followed by the infinitive. For example, I may go to the meeting, or she might decide to join us. These expressions help us convey uncertainty or potential actions. Moving on, the present simple tense is frequently used in conditional sentences, especially when discussing facts or routines. For example, if it rains, the ground gets wet. It's a straightforward way to express general truths. When we consider conditional sentences with possibility, we often use if plus the present simple tense, and then will plus the infinitive in the main clause. This structure indicates that if a certain condition is met, a specific future action is likely to happen. For instance, if I finish my work early, I will go for a walk. Similarly, with future facts, the pattern is quite consistent. We start with if and the present simple tense, and then we use will plus the infinitive to describe what will happen if that condition is fulfilled. For example, if the weather improves, we will go outside. Finally, for present facts, the structure is even simpler. Both clauses use the present simple tense, such as, if you heat ice, it melts. This highlights that these are universal truths or facts that always hold true under certain conditions. Overall, understanding these different conditional forms helps us communicate possibilities, future plans, and facts more clearly and accurately. Let's talk about expressing necessity and lack of necessity. This is a really important part of communication because it helps us clarify what is essential and what isn't. When we express necessity, we're indicating that something must be done or is required. For example, using words like must, have to, or need to. It emphasizes obligation or importance. On the other hand, expressing lack of necessity involves showing that something isn't required or isn't necessary. Words like don't have to or isn't necessary are key here. This distinction is crucial because it helps us avoid overcommitting or creating misunderstandings. It connects directly to our overall theme of clear and effective communication, making sure our intentions are understood and our messages are precise. Being able to articulate necessity, or lack of it, accurately allows us to manage expectations and collaborate more smoothly. So let's finish up with a few key points to keep in mind. When you heat a liquid, it will end up boiling if you keep increasing the temperature enough. You will see bubbles form as the liquid approaches its boiling point. Sometimes, you might heat the liquid gently at first, and then you will need to raise the temperature more to get it to boil. When mixing ingredients, it's important to get the right consistency before you see it change significantly. As the mixture heats up, you'll notice it gets thicker or starts to bubble. If you climb the temperature too quickly, the liquid will boil suddenly, and you might see it boil over. Remember, heat is what causes these changes, and boiling occurs when the liquid reaches its boiling point. So, understanding these key points helps you control the process better and achieve the desired results in your cooking or experiments.